Hello, thank you so much for joining me. This is Dana Arcuri, author, speaker, survivor, and trauma recovery coach, soon to be certified. Oh my goodness, people, I am wiring down. Only a few more weeks to go of my schooling. And then from there, August is going to be super busy, compiling all of these requirements for me to fulfill, and then to take an examination to become officially certified as a certified trauma recovery coach. So there's a lot going on, people. This is my first video for July 2021. And so I wanted to have an informational video for all of those inquiring minds who want to know more about me. I've had countless people. I mean, I'm just being literally flooded with all of these people sending me messages on my website, people reaching out, people who want to sign up and start coaching, and they're like so ready to roll. And while I am also very, very excited to start this new chapter of my life with this brand new business, which is called Bloom from the Dark Trauma Recovery Coaching, there's a lot of things that have to take place before I'm actually ready to start my business. So we'll get into that in a moment. But this video is going to be for those people who are asking me a lot of questions. So this could answer a lot of your questions about, hey, what is a certified trauma recovery coach? What do they do? What do they not do? And so I'll share a little bit about my approach, because we must understand that every person who is a certified trauma recovery coach, we have different strengths and expertise to bring to the table. We have a lot of specialized areas of our experience, personal experience, professional experience, educational experiences that we bring on board into our coaching. And so I'll get to that in a bit. For now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a coach, what we do, what we don't do, and my approach to coaching. So most of you know a lot about me already. Hey, my life's an open book. A lot of you already know that I am a trauma survivor and that I myself was diagnosed in 2019 with complex PTSD. So trust me, I understand what you are going through, especially if you are dealing with various forms of abuse, bullying, any forms of past trauma, dysfunctional families, narcissistic abuse, toxic siblings, sex abuse, spiritual abuse, domestic violence, and on it can go. And so, there's so many people who are so brave and they're reaching out for help. And I thank you so much for that. So as far as my coaching approach, I want to start with this. And a lot of times, we need to say this, especially to people who are survivors, who have been through rock bottom. This is something that you need to know. So trauma is not what's wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Instead, trauma is about what happened to you. And so please know that you are not broken. You do not need fixed. And as a trauma survivor, I could say that it's common to have a normal reaction to an abnormal event, such as if someone has flashbacks, triggers, physical pain, emotional distress. You might find yourself slammed with fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And again, this is very normal and common for trauma survivors. So in my own personal experience as a trauma survivor, I've spent many years thinking, in the past, in my younger years, I thought I could just outrun trauma. I thought I could just pretend it never happened. In the early days of my journey, I was just not willing to go there, to go to those dark, dark places that were like a nightmare. And I had to walk my own path. Sometimes we have to go wherever we are led, whatever we think might be best for us. And then as we mature, as we grow insight, as we educate ourselves, we end up on a totally different pathway for healing. And so please know there is no shame, there is no judgment on any path that you have been on in the past or currently. And everyone's path is so, so unique. There's no single one path to healing trauma. Instead, there's many, many different roads to recovery. And my job as a certified trauma recovery coach is to support you on the pathway that you choose, as long as it's not destructive, as long as you don't harm anyone, as long as it's conducive to your healing your trauma wounds. And so in my younger years, I was completely unaware that trauma is trapped within our body and our cells. I wasn't aware that trauma is directly linked to the body and mind connection, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So, back in the early days when I was a teenager, and even when I was in my 30s and 40s, I was completely unaware of this trauma response that I was experiencing. And say, for an example, I was having nightmares. Maybe I was having nightmares about the rapist. Maybe I was having nightmares about my own mother. Maybe I was having times where I felt like I was getting slammed into the freeze mode, and I didn't quite grasp what was going on with me. So if you've experienced this yourself, understand you are not alone. Next is that once I began educating myself about trauma, and this really began, the whole disclosing the truth about abuse, really coming out of the being silenced, that whole thing where, the toxic family will silence you, will censor you, will tell you, no, you're not allowed to talk about that. Well, for me, in 2017 was when I started disclosing the truth about my past experiences, especially with abuse and trauma. And then in 2018 was when I openly shared my first video about my dysfunctional birth family, my narcissistic mother, my toxic siblings, etc., etc. And from there, it just really carried on. It evolved, it transformed, and one by one, year by year, from 2018 to the present time, 2021, I've continually read, educated, did as much research about trauma, did as much research about narcissistic personality disorder and various forms of abuse and the normal common response of the aftermath of abuse and trauma. So I myself could understand this process and start doing the hard work of healing. And so the more I gained facts and the more I learned, the more insight I had, the more wisdom that I gained, then I had this new understanding about my personal experience. It was extremely life-changing, liberating, and empowering. Knowledge is power. So the first place I would always suggest that a client would consider is to educate yourself about your specific type of trauma and any kind of abuse you had, to really educate yourself, gain more insight and knowledge and wisdom about that specific area, because it can really, really help you understand, hey, you're not going crazy. It's not you. Nothing's wrong with you. This is what happened to you. And it's actually very comforting and very confirming. And it's also very validating. And so I was able to acknowledge my own trauma. I was able to address it, to process it, to work through it, and to start my healing journey and to reclaim my life. This brought me to such a time as this to become a certified trauma recovery coach, to offer support and guidance and a mentorship to those souls who are hurting right now, who might need a little hand to hold them and walk beside them and to help educate them and to validate them and to confirm, it's okay if you don't feel okay. And the goal is always to just start moving forward, even if it's one tiny baby step at a time. Next is, was this process for me easy or fast? No, it most certainly was not easy, and I guarantee it was not a fast process. Like I mentioned, I never even fully grasped my trauma until I was in my 50s. I never even broke the silence until I was in my 50s. And so everyone has a different timeline, And the reality is it doesn't matter whether it took you 20 years, 40 years, 60, 70, 80 years to finally confront your trauma. There is no judgment. There is no race. Trauma recovery is not a marathon, my friends. Instead, we give ourselves a tender loving care, a lot of self-mothering, a lot of nurturing, a lot of validation, and that's what it's all about. And so, as a certified trauma recovery coach and as a survivor, I want to give you safe space to be seen, to be heard, and to be validated. Next, trauma causes us a disconnection. Now, keep in mind, oftentimes, especially if this is someone who's a minor, you're underage, you're a child, or you're a young teenager, typically we're not really aware that we're disconnecting to ourselves. But what happens is when someone experiences trauma, they disconnect to their body, to their mind, and to their soul. You disconnect because you hurt badly. It's excruciating, it's painful, it's dark, it's gruesome, and it can be overwhelming. If you've experienced this, you're not alone. So many of us have been through it, and so many of us are still on our healing journey. Welcome to the healing journey, my friends. I welcome you, and I'm sending you gentle hugs today because I know it's not an easy path, but yet there's hope for healing and restoration and peace of mind. Science and medical research has proven that trauma isn't just in our brain. So instead, trauma is enmeshed within our DNA, and it's called cellular memory, and it gets into epigenetics. And if you're really curious, you can always research that in your spare time. And this is why recovering from trauma requires getting back into touch with yourself. So despite the unspeakable things that you have suffered, there is hope for your healing, happiness, and peace of mind. Healing your trauma means that you reconnect to yourself, to your whole body. And this would be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So understand that while mental health, traditional Western mental health, they look at symptoms and they look at you like you have this problem. That's not what we do with Certified Trauma Recovery Coach. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. We don't look at you like you're a symptom. Depression, anxiety, they're having panic attacks. We don't look at you like that. Instead, we look at you as a whole human being, body, mind, and soul. Next is that with the right emotional support, you can be in a better position to understand your own trauma experience. You could learn incredible tools. You can gain more wisdom and start your own pathway to healing. My approach to coaching is client-led. This means that you are the expert of your own life and your own recovery. So my goal is to walk beside you. My goal is to support you and to empower you to find the right pathway to your recovery. And I would like to walk beside you as your guide and your mentor. So as a certified trauma recovery coach, I am your mentor. I am an encourager. I'm a good listener and an equal partner for your healing journey. I offer you safe space in a respectful, non-judgmental way. My services are here for people who are adults. So I don't specialize in children. You must be at least 18 years on up. So I don't work with children. If for any reason there's someone who's under 18 who wants to work with me, it is not within my scope of practice to do so, and I could refer you to someone who specializes in children and minors. Sometimes clients can feel stuck, in which I am a gentle guide to help them gain clarity, to gain confidence, to implement non-medical strategies. So my focus is mostly on holistic modalities, and there's just countless ones, so many options to choose from. So my job is to work with you collaboratively to help you clear the path, so that you can find realistic solutions. And then to learn more about my values and missions, you can check that out on my website at danaarcuri.com. For anyone who's interested, there is a list of my core values and missions, and you could see if it's in alignment with where you are in your healing pathway right now. So trauma recovery coaching is not intended to be a substitute for the medical advice of therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, physicians, nor other mental health professionals. So I'll clearly state this. I am not a licensed therapist. I am not a counselor. I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a pharmacist. And so it shall not take the place of a medical evaluation, a diagnosis, and or treatment. So I'll give a little more input on spelling this out, especially if you have problems with your medicine or you are looking for someone who's a licensed therapist. Once again, that's beyond my scope of practice. You would have to look within your medical insurance or your local area and even see maybe, there could be some therapists who might have a pro bono opportunity. You'd have to check that out. So it's really important that clients understand and build awareness about practical, non-medical options for improving their own health and their own healing trauma. Now, if someone is interested in medicine, you would have to take that up with your physician, your psychiatrist, et cetera, because they are the people who focus on prescriptions and treatments. Furthermore, individuals are recommended to seek immediate professional medical care in the event they are suffering a crisis, mental health and or medical conditions, including suicidal thoughts and ideation, or engaging in destructive self-harm behaviors. Again, this is way beyond my scope of practice, in which I would have to immediately refer you out. Next, as a certified trauma recovery coach, I do not diagnose, I do not treat you in a medical fashion, nor do I give medical advice. I do not have consultations, nor do I manage a client's prescription medications. And so I want to stop right here because so many individuals who find me on YouTube are sending me messages on my website asking me to give them advice. They're saying, hey, I'd love to tell you my story and I'd love to get your advice. So I wanted to clarify once again, I don't give advice. That is beyond the scope of a certified trauma recovery coach. I'm not a consultant. I'm not a therapist. I have ethics that I am mandated to follow, and so I must do so. So please understand, if you're looking for advice, if you're looking for help with medicine or with a narcissist and a way that you really want specific advice, you may need to seek someone such as a licensed therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, et cetera. Next would be, if you have concerns or questions pertaining to your mental health, medical conditions, negative side effects of medicine, or if you're experiencing wicked withdrawals, number one, I totally get it. I grasp it because I've been there. If you've watched any of my videos, I am very open about my past experience that was extremely traumatic for me. However, as a certified as a certified trauma recovery coach, I don't delve into anything that is specific about medication or about advising you about what medication is best for you or how to withdraw or how to taper. So that is, again, beyond my scope of practice. And so you would need to address these concerns with a traditional licensed therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, family physician, or other medical professional. Next would be that I do have areas of specialty. So, all trauma recovery coaches have certain areas that they end up expanding on and focusing on. And with, every single coach that I know, we all have different areas that are our strengths. So I'm going to share what my specific specialties are that I will be practicing and coaching as a certified trauma recovery coach. So my areas of specialty are narcissistic abuse recovery, dysfunctional family, child abuse, sexual abuse, complex PTSD and regular PTSD, intergenerational trauma, physical, emotional, sexual, and spiritual trauma. And so these are my areas of specialty. Now people can ask, hey, what's the difference between a certified trauma recovery coach and a therapist? This is a great question. So typically in traditional talk therapy, the licensed therapist is your superior. Their approach is much, much different compared to the approach of a certified trauma recovery coach. It's like apples and oranges, not the same. A certified trauma recovery coach is your mentor, encourager, and an equal team partner for your recovery journey. So coaches give safe space, sacred space, and a respectful, non-judgmental way for clients who might be struggling and suffering. A certified trauma recovery coach is ethically prohibited by the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching from working with minors, from working with people who are actively suicidal or who have been actively engaging in dangerous self-harm activities. Trauma recovery coaches do not prescribe medications. We already covered that. So understand, no, I will not be diagnosing an illness and have pretty much not anything to do with you and your medications when it gets into like specifics, your dose, tapering, if you have side effects. Again, you need to take that up with the physician who prescribed it. Certified trauma recovery coaches are not a consultant who gives advice. So while so many of you are like, hey, I need advice, understand that we are mandated with ethics that we must uphold, and we will not be giving you advice. Next is instead we ask clients helpful questions. We become curious about potential options for our client's recovery. So it is always client focused and based on what you, the client, wants in your own healing journey. So if the client has concerns or questions, that really start getting into areas that are out of our scope of practice, again, we may refer you out to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, if there's something really specific. And say, for an example, say you have a drug addiction. I don't specialize in drug addiction. And so I would refer you out to someone who has that specialty and expertise. And so if you have any concerns, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at danaarcuri.com. And then lastly, this is an announcement and a really important announcement for all of you. So many of you are reaching out, you want to start coaching, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to working with you. But I need to let you know that while I had these great plans and was anticipating to start coaching in August 2021, that due to my school responsibilities, and I have a full plate and I have a lot of expectations that need to be met to meet my requirements and my certification with school, that it is necessary that I postpone starting my trauma recovery coaching business until the second week of September 2021. And so for all inquiring minds, I will be starting in September and beyond with my coaching. Feel free again to reach out to me. I thank you so much for, always being there, always being present, having great questions, and being a part of my own healing journey. I would love to be able to support you if you are within a good fit for me and my specialties. So if you have questions, feel free to leave it in the comment. Let's keep this discussion going, or reach out to me at danaarcuri.com. Thank you, and may you have a beautiful day.